I think that's serious. I think you really did that.
Baltimore City Council Budget and Appropriations Committee, fiscal year 2020 budget hearing for the Board of Liquor License Commissioners. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. To my left is Vice Chair of the committee, Councilman Leon Pinkett from the 7th District. To his left, Councilman Chris Burnett from the 8th District. To my right, Councilwoman Shannon Sneed, 13th District, member of the committee. Councilman Bill Henry, 4th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr.
To my immediate right is Marguerite Curran. Representing Mayor Jack Young is Jeff Amoros. Jeff, what are we up to on the request count?
The next request will be request number 33.
33? Got it. Mr. Akris, please take it away. If you could first introduce your team and then keep your presentation to around 10 minutes, and we'll jump right into questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. To my right is Acting Chief John Chrysomales. To his immediate right is Masai Biene, our Fiscal Officer and Accountant. To her right is Matt Akhamar, our Community Liaison, and I am Tom Akris, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Liquor Board. First of all, greetings, Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the Board of Liquor License Commissioners and Executive Secretary Doug Page, who unfortunately could not be with us this evening, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 20 budget. The Administrative Division, which is housed in Service 850, which is on the screen in front of you, is responsible for the issuance, transfer, and renewal of the city's alcoholic beverage and adult entertainment licenses. It should be noted that the license year runs from May 1st to April 30th. Last year, we had 1,221 liquor and adult entertainment licenses. Adult entertainment licenses were 27, liquor licenses were about 1,197. This year's budget maintains the funding at the current level of service, and the agency did receive additional monies to expand upon our community liaison program. We'll go into that in a couple of minutes. The next slide is 851, which is our liquor licensing service. This service houses the inspection division, which is responsible for regular inspection of licensed establishments to ensure compliance with state laws and agency rules and regulations regarding the sale of alcohol and provision of adult entertainment in the city of Baltimore. This year, this budget, or sorry, what we were awarded, what we're requesting from the City Council maintains the current level of service. In addition, we were given some enhancement money to purchase 4 police radios, which are utilized by inspectors in our division for public safety purposes to maintain reliable contact with the police when they're conducting routine inspections and special investigations. In front of you, you have a handout I provided. I don't know if everybody has this for the Board of Liquor License Commissioners. Just a quick snapshot of where we are. As you can see, our licenses, I'm on slide 2, we've gone from 1,272 licenses. As of today, we have 1,142 licenses that have renewed. That's on slide number 2.
Tom, can you, I don't like to interrupt, but can you tell us the story there, or just give us a little background on it?
Yes, of course. So there are a couple things, but specifically this year, we're seeing fewer Class A licenses renew because of the impact, the zoning law impact that's going to be taking effect June 5th. So we've seen a number of Class A packaged goods stores in residential areas who are electing not to renew their liquor license. That's where we are today. Because the renewal season officially ends both adult and liquor establishments in July 1st, that's just a snapshot today of where we are. This number could change within a month. If you turn to the next slide, you can see over the course of the last 4 years the board's production and how it's increased over the last 4 years. Whereas in 2015, you can see with new establishments, the board approved 25. We're now at 35. What's important to see is from where we were with total non-violation hearings, 137, we're up to 203, but violation hearings, they've jumped dramatically. In fact, if you turn to the next slide, they've jumped up 58% if you look at slide 4, from 2018-19 license year 2017-18 license year. And a lot of that has to do with the partnership we have with the police department conducting underage stings, the social club task force through the violence reduction initiative going out Fridays, Saturdays, conducting those wraparound targeted enforcement matters. But production overall is up across the board. The one new piece that we've added, if you turn to slide 5, is the community liaison piece. It was very important, and last year the City Council supported funding for the introduction of the Community Engagement Initiative. And that's where we brought on Matt Ockhammer, created policies and procedures to engage communities all around the City of Baltimore, to hear out any questions, concerns, complaints about liquor licensing, and also to provide information to a lot of communities that didn't feel as if they were engaged. And you can see the numbers. 105 community associations visited, the special events or community resource affairs that we've attended and participated in, the questions, the handouts, and most importantly, some of the specific complaints which have led to investigations done by the agency. And if you turn the page, lastly, you'll see where we visited as per councilmatic district. Just the number of locations, the map in the city, and where we visited per district. And that's our presentation. If you have any other questions right now, me or a member of the agency can answer those.
I just have a general comment. The performance of the liquor board, specifically on the administrative side, has just been absolutely incredible over the past couple years in my 4.5 years on the council. Matt, you've been doing great work. I know you've been very active. I think that map said that you've been to 16 different community meetings in my district. I really appreciate that, as I know most of my colleagues do. John, the inspections, the responsiveness whenever we've had an issue in the district has been incredible. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And Tom, you and Doug have just been fantastic, working with good establishments that are trying to do the right thing, helping them out, and ensuring that those businesses are successful in our city, continue to responsibly serve both residents and visitors to our city, and ensuring that they're continuing to grow their business and hire more people in the city. I could not be more happier. I'm just speaking for myself personally with the liquor board and your performance. I truly believe, especially in light of the audit a few years ago and the way that you guys have turned things around, in my eyes, truly sets you all up as a model agency. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. Councilman Pinkett, Councilwoman Sneed.
Oh, thank you.
And we've been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes from the 12th District, and to my immediate right is Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee. I think everything bleeds together now, so I may have said that a couple times already. I apologize.
I just want to say I concur with everything that the chairman has said. You guys have been a really big help in my district, and so I appreciate all the work you've done there. I know we have a lot more work to do in my district, but the residents really appreciate, Matt, you answering their concerns and questions and just putting it in layman's terms for us. So thank you. The first question I have, it's about, is basically, can you cite the specific law that requires 4 inspections per year? Like, where can we find that at?
Okay. Alcoholic Beverages Article 122203 requires that an establishment be open at least once every 90 days. And so if you break that up across the year, it's about 4 inspections a year.
Can you say how many inspectors work during weekdays versus evenings and weekends?
It depends. For the most part, we have 3 shifts. We have a 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift, and that's where most of the inspectors will be working, and that's Monday through Friday. Sunday through Thursday, we have a 3 to 11 shift, and 1 inspector is staffed for that shift to address any 311 complaints that we receive. On Fridays and Saturdays, since we work with the Social Club Task Force, we have a specific Social Club Task Force inspector and a 6 p.m. to 2 p.m. inspector. Sometimes we will pull more inspectors depending on the needs of that evening. We work with the Violent Reduction Initiative and the police department to enumerate how many locations we're going to be visiting, and that we'll make determinations on staffing, sometimes on those days. And then Saturday, we always have a dedicated person working 6 p.m. to 2 p.m. To address 311 calls.
Okay, I might come back to that, but I'll let my colleagues go who may have other questions. So thank you.
Burnett, and then Stokes, and then Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to your team. I would like to also continue the Love Fest for the work being done by this agency, especially the community outreach. Has been incredibly helpful for my constituents to really help better understand how to navigate the complaint process, understanding how the licenses are issued, how the renewal process. I've seen much increase in engagement around liquor licenses and engagement at the liquor board in the 2.5 years that I've been here. It seems to be happening a lot more than previously. And like I said, I know for sure I've heard good feedback from my constituents about just the responsiveness and just appreciation for the outreach and education. So keep doing that. The only other question I had was, were there any updates, and I know this is a zoning matter, but with Transform Baltimore, is there anything that can be spoken to from the liquor board's perspective about changes with the licenses on that front?
Well, we've been in communications with the Department of Housing and Community Development, specifically Ms. Katie Byrne, Commissioner in charge of code enforcement, in terms of the Class A licenses that we have, and I think they're prioritizing the Class A. In fact, just yesterday, I provided Ms. Byrne with an updated list of all the Class A's that we have that have renewed. So they have that information, and they're going to be the enforcement arm. For us, they're asking us for the information. We're trying to give it to them as timely as possible. So we're in constant communication on that issue.
Okay. And two, and this is, I know, again, maybe a larger question to have, but I saw that there were 35 new establishments in 2018, 2019, new licenses issued. When issuing licenses, what considerations are made to back to the transform piece, liquor store density or liquor license density? Is that a consideration in the board's process of granting new licenses? With really the concern being that as we continue to try and reduce density in residential neighborhoods, are there new licenses being issued in these very same areas that the council has pushed to try and reduce the density? Is that a consideration in that conversation about new applicants?
I think that's a very good question. For a new license, and there are only 2 types of new licenses that can be issued by the board. The first is a Class B restaurant license, where there is a requirement that there is a food sales piece. The board cannot issue new packaged goods stores. So either it's a Class B restaurant license or it's a license created specifically by the legislature. For instance, casino license would be an example. So the board takes into consideration a host of factors, desire, uniqueness of services, things of that nature. But the new licenses are restaurant licenses. So when they're issuing the new restaurant licenses in neighborhoods, the board doesn't necessarily specifically consider density because it's not per se they're not, the concentration is not on off-premise sales or it's on-premise for consumption only. But they do hear general testimony, and we definitely solicit the testimony and input of the community on any issuance of a liquor license. In fact, we encourage and expect that our applicants meet with the community on a lot of these applications, and if they don't, and there is community pushback, the board will postpone matters and not hear them.
And are there, last question, Mr. Chair, are there criteria, so you mentioned community engagement, is there set criteria for what that actually means, and what does it look like? Do they have, and I'm saying that in the sense of like, for the late night operating license, different thing, finance department, one of the ways that communities can push back, or one of the requirements for the license opposition, is that the residents have to be residents of the immediate area, and I think that needs to be confirmed by some fashion. With these licenses, how do you confirm, like, what does community mean, I guess, to the board?
Well, so if you, Alcoholic Beverages Article 4-210 specifically outlines the criteria, 'cause it's all statutory, specifically outlines the criteria that the board has to consider when reviewing any application. And so there, when we talk about uniqueness of services, there's a public safety, health, well-being criteria that they have to review, and there's kind of a catch-all criteria as well. But as part of that is the community impact that it would have on the license, and that's taken from the testimony of community representatives, and they can come from anywhere. Any party, as long as you're present, can testify on a transfer hearing or a new license application hearing, pro or against.
Okay. Can I get one more, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Okay. The other piece I wanted to inquire about, so when issuing, I know this is something that comes up a lot with the renewal protests, which are the 911, 311 calls. When issuing new licenses, is that data reviewed by the board as well? As far as looking at making sure that a new license isn't going into a community that's already experiencing high levels of violence, and that can be documented through police reports, 311 calls, 311 complaints.
For a new license, which would be a Class B license, that's something that the board hasn't had information on, and which is the only new license that the board can issue. We haven't had information on 911 calls or 311 calls specifically.
Okay, and would that, for them to consider that as a part of their analysis, would that be a statutory requirement, or is that something that can be done administratively?
I'd like to, and these are kinds of questions that we would ask our Attorney General, and is it all right if I can get back to you on that matter?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
We've been joined by Councilman Yitzi Schleifer from the 5th District, member of the committee, and Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton from the 6th District, member of the committee. Councilman Stokes.
Tom, I just want to thank your staff, not just the administrative, but your inspectors have been great. And I want to just talk about ERC 500, who you knew that was a black hole on North Avenue in Greenmount because of the officer that had a fight with one of the patrons and drug activity, everything going on. I can guarantee you, everybody in that community, now I want to thank y'all, because if you ride past there, it's real peaceful at Greenmount in North Avenue. But I wanted to mention, y'all have a task force that goes out and inspect these liquor business, right?
The social
Can
club
you
task
explain what the task force, what they do, and who is on the task force? Because from my understanding, y'all have no control over the task force. Am I correct?
So
I mean, they don't come out of your office.
no. So the social club task force is comprised of the police department, fire department, housing department, health department, and inspectors from our agency. And the social club task force generates its list on a weekly basis to enforce or identify locations that may be problem locations, locations where we've received, where other agencies have received anonymous complaints about, so that we can do wraparound targeted enforcement. And it's a conversation. Not necessarily one agency is driving the train per se, but it's a conversation that happens among the agencies, and there's a list that's made each week to go out and do that targeted, identified enforcement.
One other question. The zoning, through the zoning, there is some new zoning with these liquor establishments that they have to come in compliance in terms of 50% of their package sales they have to sell. Can you, and this is probably a request for you, Mr. Chair, can you give this group a list of those ones that's possible that's going to be shut down if they're not in compliance? Is that possible?
I can provide you with a list of the Class A's, because you're talking about the BD7 taverns, right?
Right.
I can give you a list of the Class BD7s that the new law affects, not a problem.
But the ones that's in the process
In the
of being shut
residential.
down. Right, the residential, right.
Yeah, because the process is going to be Department of Housing and Community Development's going to be working through BMZA to pull the use permits for these identified establishments that don't meet the criteria, and then they let us know the use permit's been pulled, and that's when they can't sell alcoholic beverages anymore. It's when the use permit's pulled by the Department of Housing and Community Development. They've come up with a list of those establishments which are in residential areas which have to come into conformance. So I'll work with Department of Housing and Community Development and get you a list.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, you got that? That's number 33? Thank you. We've also been joined by Council President Brandon Scott. Councilman Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I will, as my colleague from the East said, I will continue the Love Fest to the extent that I have always had a soft spot in my heart for the Liquor Board. My father, as I may have mentioned, worked for the board as an inspector investigator all through my high school and college years, which is a great way to limit one's inappropriate behavior in liquor establishments during their teen and young adult years, to know that their father is an inspector investigator for the establishments in question. I did want to say that I have followed the board and its activities closely as a result of growing up with my father's stories, many of which are sealed for a number of years still. But I wanted to follow up on Councilwoman Sneed's question about the division of labor in terms of when inspectors are scheduled, because I remember my father reporting for a dispatch, or I forget what the term was, but everybody had to be there at 10 o'clock to be given a list of establishments that they had to go out and inspect, but then some of them had to also go back out at night and investigate specific cases. And what I was curious about is if you are doing 4 inspections of every establishment every year, and that is just a given, where it's not a question of are they good establishments or problem establishments, but everyone has to be visited 4 times just to check to make sure that they have everything that they're supposed to have. That would seem like a lot of staff time to use up on what would conceivably be routine work. And if you have a situation where you've got people complaining about problem establishments, which I would imagine those complaints are always going to be on evenings and weekends, how many of those complaints are daytime-based, comparatively speaking? I mean, we know that there are some places that are a problem all day long, but most of them seem to be a problem on evenings and weekends. Have you talked about asking for changes in the law so that you would not have to do all of those sort of standard checks, and you could reallocate existing resources to have more people working evening and weekend shifts, and you wouldn't need as many people working the daytime shift if you only had to visit each establishment 3 or even 2 times a year just to confirm that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
So I think that's a very good question, and let me respond by first saying that every 2 weeks and before the ransomware attack, we would conduct a liquor stat analysis, and we would track to see what each inspector was doing, how many inspections were being done, where are these inspections being done. I think 4 inspections per establishment per year is a goal, but it varies all across the board. For instance, during the mayor's VRI, or during the VRI initiative, we've been to certain establishments 13 times, 14 times. I can give you locations where we've had 20 inspections at a location, and that's driven by police requests, driven by anonymous complaints, driven by 311 calls. So although 4 per year may be the goal, where there are problem establishments, we're there all the time. We're conducting those inspections. We have places on Bel Air Road, where we've been there almost 20 times during the license year, because that's a request being made by the police department. And that's something that's very valuable with the VRI sessions, in that we get that intel, we get that information, and we send our inspectors out. So although 4 inspections is the goal, not all locations always get 4 inspections. Sometimes you have those Knights of Columbus or the Class C nonprofit licenses that are open sporadically, and we only get to those locations 2 times. Our goal is to have about 4,996 inspections done. That would be the perfect world, where we inspect all of these locations 4 times. We conducted last license year almost 5,300 inspections, but we didn't go to each location 4 times. There were a number of locations that we only visited 2 times. So the law of average, it works out that way, where a lot of our resources are dedicated to the problem establishments, or if they are problem establishments, instead of doing all the routine inspections.
So I'll tell you, that's a very comforting answer, and it's good to hear that that you're treating these as goals and not getting caught up in making sure that every establishment is treated just the same. I appreciate that. I would still question if this is a mandate that you have to follow in the law. I would still question whether it would be worth having a conversation with the Senate about, is that really the best metric to set as your goal? Is total number of inspections, for example, a better metric to have as your driver than how quickly are you resolving concerns from the public? I know you have a number. I don't know if it was on here this year, but I know that in the past, yeah, here we go, 311 calls abated or closed within 72 hours. I would think that that's a better driver for your agency, potentially, than total number of inspections, and that if you feel like you're managing that one, maybe aspirationally you should talk to the senators about having your goal be, what could we do to manage our resources to try to drive that number from 72 down to 48, that kind of thing.
That's not a problem. And I will let you know that we do close out our inspections 96% of the time within 24 hours. So that's 72 hours. So we do actually get to our locations pretty quickly. And I just do want to let everyone know, and I can provide information to the council, every 2 weeks we look back at the prior 2 weeks 311 phone calls. And based on the prior 2 weeks 311 phone calls, we add these locations to the Social Club Task Force. We schedule these locations for underage stings and or BD7 checks. So we are looking at the data as it's coming in, analyzing it, and making agency decisions based on the demand that's out there.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Can I ask another question?
Sneed?
From on page 3, I see that every year the violation hearings just go up and up. You might have said this already, but what percentage of the hearings are sales to minors? Which, I'll just leave it there.
Actually, I do not know offhand. May I get you that information? Can I send that to the council?
Yeah, yes.
I'll give you a percentage breakdown of violations.
Which drive in the numbers, perfect. That would be helpful.
No problem.
Colleagues, any other questions? Or Jeff, or Councilwoman Sneed, what was that request again?
If they can tell us what the breakdown of the 194 violation hearings are for?
What do you mean?
What percentage of the hearings that are to sales for minors, which percentage of sales to minors?
The breakdown in the infraction?
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
We can get that information to the council.
Jeff, you got that? Good, okay. Colleagues, any other questions for the Liquor Board? Tom and Doug, even though he's not here, and John, everyone else, thank you for the excellent service. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, thank you for your comments. I thank all members of the committee and Mr. President for your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now in recess till 7 p.m.